Hello, everybody. Welcome to Saturn Partners YouTube show, the Maritime Cyber Brief. And this is the channel where, we discuss security topics in the maritime industry. I'm your host, Fernando Leon, and I'm joined by my co-host, Carole Crawford, who is our in-house security guru, expert extraordinaire. Now, we're going to be wrapping up part 2 for the topic we discussed last week, which is the hidden cyber gaps in IT and OT threatening the maritime industry. So let me get this show started because I got several points I want to make, and I've got some questions here that I want Carole to clear up for us because, there's just a lot of threats in every industry, but the maritime industry is especially, it's a little special. It's more impactful. It can have a huge impact on the U.S. economy. So let me just dive in. And first up is going to be the gap between shoreside policy and shipboard reality, which is an interesting topic I want to just quickly bring up. So one of the most overlooked cyber risks is the gap between what headquarters believes is protected and what the crew on board can actually execute during a live incident. Because a vessel is obviously out to sea and it's moving, connectivity may be limited. Vendors may not be on board, crew members may not have cyber depth or that experience on how to deal with a security breach. So in that moment, response plans that look strong on shore can collapse under operational reality quickly, which is obviously there's going to be a lot of pressure, especially when you're out to sea. So I know it's easy to plan inside a conference room and have it all documented in your nicely set up compliance binder. But in real live events, it's different. You can have all the policies and processes in place, but when you have a true security breach or legitimate threat, it just changes the game. So my first question to Carole is, how should maritime CISOs, the directors of IT, the directors of security, test whether their cyber response plans actually work while ships are out to sea?
Well, when you have shipboard conditions and you're not just looking at a compliance binder or a boardroom, you've got several issues you're looking at. First of all, on the last program, I mentioned earlier the guts of it all, meaning the incident response plan or IRP. It has to be kept up to date, and what they can do if they're unsure of the status of their plan is to possibly have an on-site test of the IRP and other areas instead of just virtual exercise, which is pretty common. And we do both. Our engineers can go on site to test and make sure everything works properly, or we can offer it virtually. And this is really important that you don't leave any gaps here. So we advise on this, but the client has to really look hard at the full cyber program, which is all these different pieces and services, and alter it to fit their particular shipboard or corporate situations, because no two are alike. All the other situations, components of the plan I mentioned earlier have to be there. And if I'm a CISO, I will look at items such as the last penetration test, what was the results, what did they learn from it, from the testing of the IRP, what did they do wrong, and the whole reason for testing this should be twice a year at least. They need to know what they did wrong, how to fix it, and not wait for another test to find things that were not addressed in the previous one. So it's important to have continuity here with planned testing on everything too. So it's really important that these are lessons to be learned. They are not dry things that are sitting in a binder. They have to be live documents that everybody in charge has a piece of, and the team needs to all have their role.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more because, these live events, or let's just say a legitimate threat or a takeover, could throw in some panic for some people that are dealing with who are out to sea. So yeah, there's definitely has to be tabletop tests, I believe, and that's good to know that you can provide that type of solution. Also, I know I've always been under the impression that you're monitoring to ensure they stay secure and compliant, but doing that tabletop is really good to know. That test, that testing their people. I mean, I think it has to be done at least annually on every ship, not just one ship.
I agree.
All right, let me move on to the next topic, which is cargo systems and silent disruptions. Now, cargo systems create a different kind of cyber risk because disruption may not look like a dramatic shutdown, some dramatic event. Now, it may appear as mismatched records, delayed release orders, corrupted manifests, inaccessible customs data, or uncertainty about container status. So that ambiguity can slow terminal decisions. It could trigger, which will trigger downstream, affecting supply chain delays and could create financial loss, even when cranes, vessels, and gates are technically still running. So what makes cargo systems? Well, what would make cargo system compromise so dangerous, especially when the disruption may appear first as confusion, bad data, or delayed decisions instead of a visible outage?
Well, there's so many places and ways to cause disruption from the bad guys, as I call them. Confusion, panic, things like that. When I was talking about the incident response plan, everybody should have their roles that are on the team all the way up to upper management and be responsible for critical things such as who's going to talk to the media. Your legal team needs to be involved, your upper management, your IT management. There's a lot of moving parts that are connected to this topic of when we're talking about cargo system compromise. It's super dangerous anyway because it allows malicious actors, to covertly manipulate load data, steal high-value freight, facilitate smuggling without raising immediate alarms. The, well, quote, silent element paralyzes supply chains, which is a big, big problem on the cyber danger list, is all the supply chain issues. And any of this causes really heavy money losses, leads to a cascading type of scenario, logistical failures before the operators even know that there's a real breach. The specific dangers of the compromise, well, it's tied to systemic factors, and I'll touch on, there's 4 or 5 of them, I guess, that come to mind. First of all, you have covert asset diversion, where hackers can digitally change shipping manifests and bills of lading and port release codes. This also allows them to reroute the shipping containers to different docks and also steal cargo seamlessly using insider assistance. So you've got something we talk about, on my end of it, is hub and spoke vulnerability. This means that modern logistics, they rely so heavily on interconnected software. So when you compromise a single central cargo management node or even a booking system, can instantly paralyze hundreds of ships, causing huge backlogs and port congestion at the minimum. Then you've got, on top of that, the next point that comes to mind on that is regulatory and compliance chaos. When you have digital cargo records that do not physically match the goods being unloaded, vessels can face extended port holds, and that, we don't want that. Classification societies and local authorities must manually inspect and verify compliance, which can lock up operations and costing shipping companies, millions of dollars.
No.
You've also got the loss of supply chain visibility, and the shippers require reliable data to pivot and manage this. So if you get silent data manipulation, it destroys the trust that's required to reroute freight, leading to stockouts and halting production. So the maritime area, their huge reliance on digitized information technology, IT, and OT, operational technology, makes them real targets for these, money motivated cyber crooks. And it's really important to take a look at all the issues around this one. But one thing that I always have to remind people when we talk to them is that we have to remember it's staggering numbers. Worldwide maritime security is so critical. The vast majority of all our goods and services, if you remember what COVID did, just as a starter, all these goods move over the water, a staggering amount of our world economy. So when that gets screwed up the way it did, for example, in COVID, it allowed a lot of holes to come in, and there were a lot of attacks that were never even caught or noticed until it was too late.
Wow. Wow. Scary.
Yeah.
Scary. Yeah, no. It's these cyber attacks can be so disruptive and also cause a lot of headaches for these maritime organizations. So let's talk about something that can at least make it a little bit more challenging for them, is the segmentation part of the business, because segmentation can play a big part in business continuity. Now, network segmentation sounds like a technical control, but in the maritime industry, it's really a business continuity control, because if IT and OT and vendors and cargo systems are not properly separated, one compromised account or infected endpoint can force broader shutdown decisions. That's if you don't have a really good switch guy who's configuring your network so everything is separated. So it's really important to have a talented either Cisco or maybe Juniper, but you need someone who can segment your network, because the failure is not simply that attackers move laterally. The failure is that leadership. We got to look at leadership. They lost the ability to keep critical operations running selectively during recovery decisions under real-time pressure immediately. So it's so important to have those, all of those components segmented. Now, the question that comes to mind is, how does weak segmentation change the business impact of an incident? And why should maritime leaders see segmentation as a continuity strategy rather than just a network design preference?
Well, this is another point that is extremely dangerous for maritime organizations. And when I say, I'm not just talking about container ships or regular cargo vessels. We're talking about the ports. We're talking about devices that are on docks that could be sitting very near United States military vessels or coming in under foreign flag. And if there's too many things that aren't organized, there's a lot of dangers that can, slip through. I would say, first of all, no matter, and I've given talks on this before, there are still too many silo arrangements out there. And what happens with weak segmentation between IT and OT, it transforms a localized IT issue into a catastrophe, for an operational emergency. So instead of isolating incidents like an email ransomware attack or to business systems, a flat network allows malware to spread laterally, as we were talking about. This disables physical controls, it screws up vessel safety, and paralyzes the all-important supply chain. A compromised IT-OT boundary fundamentally changes the business impact in the maritime industry by magnifying certain risks, and there's a handful of these. One is what we call the blast radius of vessel control, total loss of systems. Under that point, without strict segmentation, attackers can jump from standard office crew networks directly into critical OT infrastructure. And then you have the physical consequences of that. Incidents routinely transition from data breaches to physical emergencies. Threat actors, or the bad guys as I call them, they can manipulate electronic chart display, information systems, chart data. They can disable the ballast control or cause a major disaster with total propulsion shutdowns. And then you have the safety and environmental side of it. A loss of steering or navigational controls makes an immediate risk of collisions, groundings, environmental disasters. Just having you're using GPS for navigational, there's always the risk if something that we use every day to rely on satellites, when one of those malfunctions, you can have ships that get totally lost at sea, can't find the ports, they don't know where they are, and they might run into another ship. So you lose all that, and you can have loss of life claims and just catastrophic liability and environmental disasters. So another thing that is the escalating financial and downtime cost from extended halts due to operational problems. Restoring compromised physical engineering systems or port cranes takes a significantly longer than rebuilding standard IT servers. The cost of daily operational downtime, meaning like vessels stuck at anchor or idle ports, it really eclipses typical IT data recovery costs. So you've got ransomware vulnerabilities, because operational downtime has a high financial problem. Operators are forced into really unfavorable positions where they're paying a ransom. Seems like it's the only viable method to regain control of their machinery. And then when you take that into supply chain and port-wide bottlenecks, lateral movements in ports, interconnected risks means you have a breach anyway. On a poorly segmented ship, it can spread to the Port Authority logistics platforms, cargo management, and then you have the ripple effect, disruptions cascade out or down or outward, which leads to port-wide bottlenecks, cripple international trade, can really cause severe financial loss and reputational damage for all of the logistics partners involved. Then you got the regulators again, the exposure. Maritime incorporates. They strictly need to mandate that these risks be incorporated into safety management systems. Weak compromise or weak segmentation leads to compromise. Easily preventable OT a compromise, exposes operators though to severe regulatory costs, loss of certification for your vessels, which is disastrous. Basically, you can't move. And port state detentions, and then you have the insurance implications, post-incident audits. By classification societies and insurance, they will penalize organizations with badly configured networks and could void their cyber insurance coverage. And I've talked to cyber insurance people about this very thing, driving up their premiums. As I said in the earlier program, is that cyber premiums are tied to perceived preparedness for any cyber incident. And just like in banking, where they hate risk, so do the insurers of these maritime organizations.
Well, that's a great segue into my next topic, because all those risks that you're talking about, which are so damaging, and it's just not, this is no longer about, we've got a delayed package in the cargo, right? I mean, insurance agents get involved. You've got compliance, you got regulators. Now, how can we avoid all these problems? Great, assessments. Assessments reveal operational vulnerabilities. Now, security assessments are often treated like a compliance exercise, but in maritime, they should expose whether the organization can actually operate through what we would call cyber stress, cyber attack, cyber threats, right? So, a meaningful assessment should identify critical IT and OT assets. It would map dependencies, test access path, which I know Ben is doing for our current client. Review third-party connections, which is another doorway into the network, and which also would validate monitoring. And now we're not talking 24/7 monitoring, we're not talking business hour monitoring. We're talking 24/7 monitoring, and not just for the IT side. You got to include the OT side of the business now. Now, without that visibility, leaders are making continuity promises to customers, regulators, and I know we all love insurance agents, that that all of this will that they will survive an attack. That the first real incident under pressure that they will have they will be able to respond under all this pressure at scale, right? So my question to you would be this, Carole: what should a maritime security assessment uncover that a standard IT audit usually misses? Because especially around OT dependencies. And don't forget about vendor access. You got the cargo movement and having that incident response readiness. What should they do? What should leadership be doing? What should they be doing to hold their IT people and OT people accountable?
Well, you have, first of all, you were talking about what should a maritime security assessment uncover that a standard audit usually misses? Well, while a standard IT audit, it focuses on corporate networks, compliance, data loss. Maritime security assessment uncovers, though, the physical, operational, and system level vulnerabilities that are unique to vessels and port facilities, therefore kind of unique to this industry. It bridges the gap between IT and OT, specifically looking for risks that threaten a ship's seaworthiness, cargo integrity, physical security. A specialized maritime assessment is designed to uncover critical elements that traditional IT audit it does usually miss, and here's a couple of them. First of all, you have your operational OT. You get your OT vulnerability shipboard systems. IT audits rarely touch physical navigation systems, propulsion controls, ballast water management, or even dynamic positioning systems. I was talking about the navigational screw-ups that can wind up losing it. Maritime assessments check for unsecured serial to Ethernet converters and also legacy OS vulnerabilities on bridge equipment and unpatched programmable logic controllers, PLCs, that could result in loss of the control of the vessel. So you also have proprietary hardware as an issue where OT uses custom-built proprietary architecture rather than standard Windows, Linux environments. So assessments evaluate vulnerabilities in a specialized maritime set of protocols that standard IT vulnerability scanners cannot interpret. So back to our topic, how it affects supply chain and compliance classification. There's the Society for Maritime mandates that assessments ensure systems comply with strict international requirements, and which also dictates how third-party equipment or network resilience are integrated on modern ships. So, and then you have your vendor access. It identifies remote access points used by OEMs for engine diagnostics, satellite communications, closing off hidden backdoors that IT networks usually lack visibility into. Then you have the physical security alignment and convergence. A standard IT audit does not assess physical barriers. Maritime assessments directly evaluate more the intersection of physical and cybersecurity, which ensures digital access points like CCTV, automated door locks on a ship or port facility can't be easily bypassed. So we're talking about the regulators again. The regulators assess compliance with the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code, as well as the Maritime Transportation Security Act, and they're big into evaluating cyber response plans and programs, which have so many elements, integrated with traditional physical safety management. Then you have the human side of it, because the humans usually make most of the mistakes. In my experience, in my industry, it's usually not the tools. So you've got crew workarounds and human factors in isolated environments. So when an IT audit assumes the users are in a standardized corporate environment. Maritime assessments address the realities of isolated environments, like for example, crew members that change all the time, coming in from different countries, etc., connecting personal devices to unauthorized network segments to access entertainment or bypass VSAT bandwidth controls because they're using their own device. It's danger in every industry, and we can't stop it. Genie's out of the bottle for like a million years now. Anyway, when it comes to emergency preparedness here with this topic, you have assessments that verify if crews know how to execute manual overrides for critical digital systems during an incident, which ensures the physical ship safety. For example, steering the vessel manually, even if the digital navigation suite is compromised. You've got radio and satellite communication risks for AIS spoofing. So a maritime assessment investigates external communication vectors, which evaluates the risk of unencrypted and unauthenticated, tripping on that word, it's a long one, satellite communications, VSAT, and determines whether the crew has measures to detect and respond to spoofing or jamming. So it's up to the CISO and the FSO really as to what should be counted as a cybersecurity vulnerability versus the other side of it. So there's huge compromise dangers here. Maritime probably has the biggest problem of almost every industry because there are so many things that still are not tied together, IT and OT. And as you were saying, we have an engineer working on a project right now where they just virtually needed every part of the plan. I mean, they just needed help overall. And that's what we find. Doesn't have to be a big company or small company. It's how it's been managing its risk up to now.
I agree. And this is a great segue into the last topic I want to mention is the maritime industry leans heavily on their internal IT people. And IT teams, they can't do it all. I mean, they have to go on vacation. They get sick. They're also they have to go to sleep. So let me close out with why internal IT cannot carry this huge load, this huge security load that puts a lot of stress to not only review every alert, but you have to interpret behavior. You have to interpret, is that a true download? Is that a true lateral? Is that a legitimate lateral movement from one device to another? And our technology that we implement is just amazing, and it can quickly interpret a lot of these potential threats. And our team is amazing on doing that. But the strategic danger in maritime cybersecurity is assuming, that internal IT can carry the full burden on their own. Maritime environments are nonstop. They're 24/7. And operationally, they are unforgiving because you got vessels, you've got that are operating 24/7, or they're working 24/7. You got the terminals, the vendors, regulators, they're all connected to the outcome. And this is where a co-managed SOC model can be a huge benefit for a lot of these firms. Now, it's not about replacing internal IT teams. We're not about that. We're about working side by side with organizations, because it's a co-managed solution is about giving the internal teams data, right, on what we're monitoring, we're escalating, and also being aware of OT, what's going on the OT side, because you've got to have some context. You need context before a cyber event becomes operational disruption across their fleet, because these attacks come without a warning. There's no announcement. There's no knock on the door. It's just a pure attack. And the ones that are silent, they're just waiting. They're studying. They're looking at how everything works. So when they find the right moment to be where it's going to be the biggest disruption, they will take it. So my last question to you on this topic on our show today is, where does a co-managed SOC become most valuable in maritime environments? Is it early detection of threats, IT, OT visibility, vendor monitoring, incident escalation, or helping helping internal IT teams make faster decisions during operational pressure, especially after hours? Because, like I tell all our clients, we don't sleep, we don't go on vacation, and we're not calling in sick, because your business does not shut down. And maybe it does shut down, a few hours at night. Doesn't mean that cyber attackers are also taking a break. These guys are on the prowl nonstop. They're just waiting for that gap, that waiting for that right moment to attack. So where does is the co-managed SOC a great model for the maritime industry?
Well, I've been a huge cheerleader forever for co-managed SOCs because in this environment now, the bad guys never sleep, as you said, and they're always whatever you have in your cybersecurity program, and you should have. They're going to come back again and again and keep looking for those weak spots. And I really believe a co-managed SOC can really tie a lot of good things together and shore up security. First of all, it blends in-house IT control with external cybersecurity expertise. When it comes to maritime, this is kind of a hybrid model. It offloads the burden of constant network vigilance while ensuring on the shore side, the vessel crews, etc., retain the autonomy required to navigate, to control their cargo, and to meet industry-specific regulations. There really are so many benefits for the 24/7 co-managed SOCs, especially with global fleet monitoring, because ships operate continuously across time zones. So, a co-managed SOC provides around-the-clock monitoring, catching threats at sea while your internal IT team sleeps. So IT and OT harmony we're talking about. Modern vessels, they fuse IT with operational technology, and a co-managed SOC ensures that they have a really specialized and actually a holistic oversight of navigational systems, ECDIS, and propulsion control networks without disrupting real-time physical operations. So bridging the skills gap is a big point here, because there's a well-documented shortage of cybersecurity personnel capable of managing both maritime IT and OT. The hybrid model supplements internal teams with immediate access to experienced external cyber analysts. And then back to the regulatory question, the maritime operators face really strict global and regional mandates under the IMO and Coast Guard, other directives. Co-managed SOCs assist by providing really audit-ready incident reports, and you've got wonderful traceable log analysis with the best of these. And optimize resources, that's another point. Building a fully internal 24/7 SOC is cost prohibitive and silly these days with the other options that we have for most shipping companies. Sharing the responsibility offloads the burden of alert fatigue and focuses on and infrastructure management, which allows the internal teams to focus really on strategic fleet-wide initiatives. Improved insurability is in here too. You demonstrate robust continuous monitoring and really rapid response capabilities, and you've got a really strong shipping organization's risk profile with cyber insurers, which those pesky insurers keep popping up. So how, you've got a model work environment there and a co-managed approach. So the responsibilities are distributed to make sure you have maximum coverage. The service provider supplies the SIM and SOAR technology, also threat intelligence, continuous 24/7 monitoring to identify, anomalies. So the in-house maritime team gets to retain control over vessel-specific IRP. They can immediately isolate compromised systems or alter operational parameters, so to speak, leaning on the provider's analysts for deep dive, forensics and specialized support. So, conclusion here, it is so important to have IT and OT monitoring 24/7. And the one thing when choosing a monitoring partner is that there are not many firms that offer both IT and OT. Very small fraction overall in the monitoring industry, and we can offer that. And there's a lot of work in analysis involved here, a lot of vigilance, and you've got to have the right people that are watching your back 24/7, because the crooks don't attack at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. They're going to come in at 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve or Easter Sunday, that kind of a thing. Co-managed SOC really closes the gaps, a lot of the gaps we've been talking about this whole program.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you're right about there are thousands of MSSPs out there that monitor the IT side. I believe, and this is through research, there's only 20 or so organizations that do IT and OT. and we're one of them. So we're in good company. We're providing a remarkable service that that allows us to deliver value to these organizations that want to protect the OT side, because we are keeping them secure, we're keeping them compliant, and it's a valuable service that we're offering. And as a co-managed solution, it just makes a lot of sense for a lot of organizations that are, it helps them keep costs down. They don't have to build internally. They can just supplement it with a group like ours to deliver, and it will obviously to keep their network secure. All right. All right, Carole, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was great. Those are some great answers. And let me just sign off with my closing statement that if you found value in today's discussion, our topic, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss future episodes of the Maritime Cyber Brief. Our main goal is simple: keep the leaders, keep the maritime industry informed on the threats to their business. Now, if you know another executive or director who would benefit from this episode, feel free to share with them. And one last side note: if your maritime firm is unhappy with your current SOC, your vendor, or if your internal team is struggling on interpreting data at 2 a.m., reach out to Lee or I at info@saturnpartners.com. We will respond immediately. So give us a shout if you have any questions regarding our SOC services. All right, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.